Hello, everyone, and today I'm here to recap a game that ended in a 29-29 tie. I don't know how to feel about ties, but numbers, we'll go into it. Rogers was 30 of 42. He had 281 yards, 6.7 average, one touchdown, no interceptions. He was sacked 4 times, lost 28 yards on those 4 times, and had a rating of 97.4. Now, running the ball, they had Jamal Williams. He carried a bulk of the load, 16 carries, 59 yards, 3.7 average. Ty Montgomery had 5 rushes for 31 yards, and Aaron Rodgers 3 for 8. None of them scored, and that brings us to a grand total of 24 rushes, 98 yards, and a 4.1 average yards per rush. And that's better than what we've seen a little bit in the past. And receiving, Jimmy Graham he caught 6 of his 8 targets, 95 yards, no touchdown. Devontae Adams, 8 of 12 for 64 yards for only an 8-yard average per catch. Geronimo Allison caught all 6 of his targets for 64 yards. Randall Cobb, 4 for 6, 30 yards. Jamal Williams, 3 for 4 targets, only 12 yards though. And Ty Montgomery, 1 of 2 for 9. Lance Kendricks, 1 of 1 for 4. And that's really it. So they were actually 4 of 13 on third down, only converting 31% of the time, which was good news for us as Viking fans. And another good news thing was they were only 1 of 5 in the red zone, which, is 20%. And they did have the ball most of the time at 38 minutes and 8 seconds. So considering that they couldn't convert most things, and they had the ball that long, it's interesting. They had a lot of second down success. But on to the Minnesota numbers. Cousins, he was 35 of 48, 425 yards, and 8.9 average, 4 touchdowns, interception, which I don't put on him. But he was sacked only twice for 13 yards, although he was pressured more than that. You would think he would have been sacked more based on how much he was running around. And he had a rating of 118.9. Now, running the ball, if you look at the numbers, at least average yards per carry, we did better slightly, but we were playing from behind, so couldn't get it much going. But Cook had 10 rushes for 38 yards for a 3.8 average. Murray, only 4 rushes, but he had 19 yards for a 4.8 average. Ham got in there for 1 carry for 5 yards. Cousin 2 for 5, and Diggs got a very uneventful 1 rush for 1 yard. And that's 18 carries for 68 yards and a 3.8 average. Last week, 3.6 average. Slightly better, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Some improvement. Receiving. Thielen caught 12 of his 13 targets. He had 131 yards. That was one hell of a catch, by the way, and throw there at the end to Thielen. That was the 1 touchdown for a 10.9 average, by the way, on those 12 catches. Diggs, 9 of 13, 128 yards, 14.2 average, 2 touchdowns, and a long of 75. He's still the deep threat that we all know and love. And Rudolph caught 7 of 8 targets, 72 yards, and 10.3 average. He was more involved than I thought he would be. I usually anticipate him more down the field effectiveness, but he was okay at pretty much putting us into second and third and manageables. So I was okay with how he was used for the most part, even though with him, I still prefer him slightly more down the field. Give him a chance down there because he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but what he can do is he can catch the ball over people's heads. So if you give him a chance down the field, I like his odds of that better than just, this guy out in the flat, let him run. But it's more of, use him more explosively, I guess is the way you want to put that. And Dalvin Cook, he caught 3 of 5 targets for 52 yards. I almost said 54, but he had a long of 24. Treadwell, the highs and lows of Treadwell today. He only caught 2 of his 6 targets for 23 yards, but first career touchdown. It's a little sad that came after Mike Hughes' first touchdown, but we won't talk about that. That's okay. And Morgan caught his 2 targets for 19 yards, and Coley dropped his. It wasn't the best throw, but it was certainly a catchable throw, and he dropped it, and that was his only target. Now, they were 7 of 14 on third down. That, of course, is 50%. And they were 2 of 3 in the red zone for 67%. Only had the ball for 31 minutes and 52 seconds out of this game, which I say only, but only because it went to overtime and they had 38 minutes, so it's like that's a pretty large difference overall. Now, offensively, I thought Kirk played extremely well today and was like one of the main reasons why we were still in this game. And I think today he showed a little why Minnesota paid him all that money. Now, does that mean he didn't make bad plays? No, it doesn't. But I think for the most part, most of it was good. I already mentioned that one throw to Thielen to right before the 2-point conversion to end up tying this game, which ultimately ended being the last score. But I thought that was a throw Case Keenum could never make. I really don't think it was. The same with that Diggs touchdown, the long one. I don't know if Keenum can get it that far. I I think we saw some of the things that said, okay, no, we need to go all in on this guy who can make a difference. And I think you started to see that. Even though Keenum played well for us last year, it's just this guy was more consistent. And I think he started to prove that a little bit today. And now, but although that being said, there is one play that sticks out to me that we lucked out on tremendously, which was, in a way, provoked by the Packers, which was the roughing the passer. Because they changed that rule to where if you put weight on the quarterback, it's a roughing the passer call now. That's an illegal play. And that's there because of the whole Aaron Rodgers, Anthony Barr thing last year. So in a way, it kind of interesting how that played out. Not saying it's controversial. I personally don't like that rule. I think that's worse than the helmet rule. But it is what it is. We'll see if that changes after this year. I doubt it. They like protecting quarterbacks a lot in this league. But that is what it is. I thought O'Neal much better than Rashad Hill, because I thought once you saw Rashad Hill get out of the game, you stopped seeing Kirk Cousins run for his life. And that, to me, is very, very crucial because I think we saw what happens when you keep him upright. You get good things with Thielen and Diggs. And once we get Elflein back, if we can keep O'Neal there, Elflein, better center for run blocking, we might actually be able to run O'Neal in pass protection. Maybe the two bookends will be at least okay. Now we're talking a little bit better because I think because people seem to forget how important a center is. The center makes a lot of the line calls. Brett Jones has only been here for like 2 weeks. So when you look at this, Elflein should make a drastic improvement considering that his play speed is much faster than Brett Jones. And when you're talking about in space, like I know some of you guys will look at the combine numbers, but that's not necessarily how that works with offensive linemen. Usually what determines play speed with offensive linemen normally is just how in tune they are with the system, knowing their keys, their assignments, all of that, just basically knowing everything, and the more comfortable they are. Now, Brett Jones, I'm not trying to fault him. I think he's a good backup right now, but something that could be hindering his play speed is the fact that he's been here for only like 2-3 weeks. And I think with Elflein, you might get a different set of issues when he comes in, because I think he'll be better in the run blocking aspect. We might be able to run more. Dalvin Cook will probably get more explosive, and you will be able to do more screens and all those things because he's just quicker. He's a better athlete than Brett Jones. But you might get more issues between Cousins, Elflein at the center, because obviously he's never snapped to Cousins before, at least not in a meaningful game or even a preseason game for that matter. And he might in practice every once in a while, but we know for the most part he's practicing with Brett Jones. And that might be a work in progress when he comes back. But I think that might be next week based on how people were talking about it this week. Because some people were talking about him potentially starting this game today. Obviously he didn't. But the fact that it was being talked about means he might be there for week 3 in Buffalo, or in Minnesota against Buffalo. And I think that's better than waiting another week because now you have pretty much like we should be able to beat Buffalo unless 800 injuries happen, and knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But you never know with this team. But we should be able to win that game even if he has some rust on him. And I don't know, the O line can kind of improve from in house because how bad does Tom Compton and uh, Mike Remmers look from a center that doesn't know as many things as Elfline does within the system? Because at least, even though he hasn't been playing, at least Elfline has been able to study this playbook longer and know the calls and all those things. I know it's a new offensive coordinator, and some people might be like, "Well, he hasn't played in this either." Well, yes, but he's had more time to learn it at the same time, and that could make all the difference. And even though I'm not a big Tom Compton fan, I might be a bigger Tom Compton fan than I am a Brett Jones fan just because of that. And but like I said, I think that would improve the run game, even though it got a little better today. And I made a video about this last night. Pretty much just a Treadwell versus Josh Gordon thing. I was advocating for Josh Gordon a little bit. Don't know how any of you guys feel about that now after today. I just think that we can't trust a receiver past Thielen or Diggs, and Thielen and Diggs both had over 100 yards in this game. Almost the same number. Thielen had 131, Diggs 128, and after that, there's a huge drop off in terms of guys who are receivers because you're talking about Rudolph and Cook, both ahead of the next receiver, who is Treadwell, who only had 23 yards and a ton of drops. And a drop that ended up turning into an interception off of a wide open slant that I think if you had Josh Gordon, he probably catches. And I know he won't always be there, but it's an interesting thing. And the other thing, Carlson. No, 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 no. I know. I don't know if this is an overreaction, but I want Dan Bailey right now because we can't afford a kicker losing us games if we're to be in this Super Bowl contention. I mean, he missed 3 kicks today. That's 9 points off the board. Now, I don't know about you guys, but 9 points in a tie, pretty crucial. As is that interception that was popped up in the air for Kirk Cousins to Treadwell. So I don't know. We just can't afford these kicker mishaps anymore. Dan Bailey, before last year, he went through an injury last year, and then he lost his prestigious most accurate kicker in NFL history thing. But he's still the second most accurate kicker in NFL history, and he's just out there on the street. Go get the man, please. And before we cost any more games, because we can't afford another. I guess this one didn't come in a loss, but he easily could have. And I think a lot of us had that same feeling, that same Aaron Rodgers feeling, where it's like he's gonna win. It almost seemed predictable. And so yeah, I don't know if that's an overreaction. I would like to know that in the comments down below. But and defensively, I just want to know what kind of happened. There were more mistakes and mishaps today, uh, just missed tackles and missed opportunities. Like Harrison Smith got an interception today on a play that would have changed the momentum greatly throughout the whole game. And what ended up happening was there was a defensive holding. I forget on who, but there was a defensive holding, and it comes back offsetting penalties because of a holding penalty they had, which I initially thought like, oh, cool. Okay, they have a holding, therefore no matter what happens, we're good. And then there was an interception, then then it got called back, it was a problem. Like that was kind of a turning point in a way, because I feel like that could have been a swing for us back in the right way. And the run game issues might be returning, because we had some few moments in last week's game against the Niners where some runs would really kind of break free a little bit. Not like long runs, but like we'll have spurts of we'll have like an 11-yard run here and then another one, and then they'll kind of like just stack up like that. We kind of saw that a little bit again today. Now, granted, Green Bay has a different blocking technique, and I'm shocked more teams don't use it. I'm assuming it's because it's a little hard to execute, but they essentially do legal holds every play. So that's why Aaron Rodgers has as much time as he normally does. And even though he does get sacked more, I think that's more because he does try to create extra plays with his legs and all of that. So that might have a thing to do with this game, but in general, that we saw that a little bit last week. And speaking of things that were returning from last week, was in the past game, I'm starting to notice tight ends can be a problem. Because Jimmy Graham, 95 yards today. Last week, George Kittle, 90 yards. That's not a very good thing, especially like you will go against these better tight ends in the league this year. Because I know you have Gronk on the schedule. That's not going to be fun if that doesn't get fixed until way then. Uh, I know Luke Wilson, he's an athlete, he plays for Detroit. Like, if this continues to be a problem, we need to fix that. And I really do think, outside of the whole not being able to penetrate runs all too often, whether or not that was just because of ineffectiveness or because of that run or that blocking technique that I mentioned earlier, I thought the D line played mostly well. Like, I think in pass rushing aspects, they actually played pretty well. They kept Rodgers kind of on his toes a little bit. He was pressured a little bit, and we got 4 sacks. That's a decent number of sacks. It's not like we got like a ton, but we didn't get few. It's kind of in the middle, like between a lot and pretty good. So I think they did pretty well for the most part. And before I leave, I want to know how y'all feel about the tie. Because I don't know how to feel about a tie. I prefer it when someone wins or loses. I understand when, you know, this helps in the long run better than a loss would, but I still don't know how to feel about ties. I would prefer a winner than a loser. But anyway, till next time, I bid you adieu.